So me being the guy who I was like, bro, why was I born into this? Like, kind of how did I get stuck here? Where's the examples at in my life, or just kind of looking at my circumstances, and I knew in my own heart that I needed to do things differently if I wanted to live a different life.
What's happening, my friends? Welcome to this episode of Car Seats and Coffee. I've got Eddie Thomason in the house. I'm telling you what, this guy is an author. He's a man of passion. You can just feel, you're going to feel it one way or another, and we're about to get at it. So let's roll into it. Eddie, welcome to the show, my man.
Dope. I'm so excited to be here, Thomas, man. So excited to jump into this discussion. I love what you're doing. I love your brand. Let's get rocking, bro.
All right, my man. So for the people that don't know who you are and what you do, Eddie, let's give a little backstory for them.
Definitely. So I am a motivational speaker inside of the youth and the college and university markets. And I just love inspiring other people, man. I look at it as everybody has a certain amount of self-limiting beliefs that they have inside of their own minds. And my passion is to go out and help people break those and shed those thoughts so they can pursue a life that they're passionate about living. So in a snippet, that's who I am.
Oh, I love it. I know there's so much more. We were able to connect a little bit before this, but
definitely.
Let's talk about that. Like, because obviously this is a show about dads, right? And
yes,
you motivating youth and you motivating, like college and youth and stuff. How's that play into your own experience, my man?
Definitely. So let's kind of go back to the background itself, because I feel as though it's really tough to give people content without context, right? So I feel like you guys got to know where I'm coming from so you can kind of get where the thought process and the mindset came from. And I was born and raised down in Baltimore, Maryland. I was born into a family that struggled with poverty for generations. I mean, my dad left when I was about 7 or 8 years old, which forced me and my mom to raise me and my brother on a $13,000 a year disability income. So poverty is an understatement, right? I mean, like, my mom always talked about robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that was pretty much what she had to do all the time to make ends meet and everything else. And I remember there was times in my life, Thomas, man, that I literally didn't have any running hot water in my house for about 2 years. And my mom would pour she would boil these huge pots of water, and she would pour some into a little basin, and then she'll mix it with some cold water, and she'll put a cup inside of it, and she'll send me upstairs, and she's like, this is what you use to bathe with, right? And I would go up there and I would dump the water over my body. That was how I rinsed off. She called it a cup towel, right? Because that was pretty much how we washed myself for about 2 years of my life. And the funny thing is, I thought that was normal, right? Going through it, I was like, oh, this just is like, a fun way of washing up, right? I never looked at it as a bad thing or anything in itself. But when you look at just the environment that we grew up in, my mom and dad both only had their GEDs. My brother dropped out of high school when he was in the 9th grade. My sister, who's actually 22 years older than me, was the only one in the family that had a diploma, right? So me being the guy who I was like, bro, why was I born into this? Like, kind of how did I get stuck here? Where's the examples at in my life, or, just kind of looking at my circumstances. And I knew in my own heart that I needed to do things differently if I wanted to live a different life across multiple minority type of situations, which is, I thought, one, I either had the option to go be a professional athlete. 2, I had an option to go be a professional entertainer of some sort, right? So either a rapper, a dancer, a singer, something like that, which I didn't have all those talents. And number 3 was to sell drugs, right? Be a drug dealer. I chose option 1. That was my choice. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to the league. I felt as though that would alleviate all the struggle and the pain and the sacrifice that my mom is going through right now. I had a pretty good athletic ability, especially in football and everything else. So I was like, you know what? That's going to be my option. I'm gonna try to go to the get a D1 scholarship, because my mom didn't have the money to pay for it. Right? Told you we grew up on next to nothing. Right? Yeah. So having that opportunity in my mind, I was like, all right, I got to go get a scholarship. I got to go do what I got to do in order to get to the next level, because back then you couldn't get to the NFL unless you played at college, right? Yeah. But here I am, nobody in my life that actually went to school. I get so many people that told me, like, it's not your cards, man. It's not your family, or, it's not that something that's necessarily an ability for you to accomplish, right? I had teachers that told me I have a better chance of being in jail or dead before I ever had the opportunity to go achieve that goal, right? But here's the cool thing, right? People kept on telling me all the time that, oh, it runs in the family. Well, you know what I said, Thomas? I said it runs in the family. It did until it ran into me.
Come on.
Right? Period. Because I knew I wanted to make some different changes. I knew I wanted the things to be different. And because of that mindset that I had at such a young age, and obviously a lot of support people around me, I'm not saying I did it all by myself, but there was definitely my mom being the biggest supporter, people that was in my corner and encouraging me. But because of that encouragement, because of those decisions early on, I became the first male in my high school to ever earn a D1 scholarship in the school's history, right?
Come on.
And then because of that, I became the first male in my family to ever earn a degree from a college or a university, right? So my entire mindset, Thomas, is being a curse breaker. I'm breaking generational curses. And I want other people to learn how to do the exact same thing, right? Because it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter the background that you were born into. You can go and create success in your life if you just choose to, right? Surround yourself with the right people, make the right decisions, and success is inevitable. It's just small positive decisions compounded over time.
Come on, listen to this. People, I'm telling you, I'm feeling this right now. I got the goosebumps, chicken skin, whatever you want to call it, right now. I'm loving this because, oh man, you saw a situation, you looked and you said, and this is what boggles my mind, man. You looked and you said, I only have 3 choices.
Yeah.
But you still were like,
self-limiting belief.
And then you took that, though, one of them, and you said, I'm making this happen. Because I'm getting out of this. When you say curse breakers, come on. Come on. Is this something, let's talk about your book. And is this something that you apply to like your motivation? Is that part of it, the curse breaking?
Absolutely, man. So like my entire introduction to the book, I talk about the term of being a curse breaker. And my whole last paragraph, I get the most excitement when I read it because it's just dope. Actually, you know what? I'm going to read it on the show, right?
Yes,
I feel like
do
it's
it.
the best idea of what you need to have in regards to being a curse breaker, right? And getting that actual part done. Okay. So hold on. Let me make sure I can get to the part in the introduction where it says it. All right, boom. Here we go. You ready for this?
Yes.
All right. No matter the price you have to pay, the reward is always worth it. I'm counting on you. Your family is counting on you. And most importantly, your future self is counting on you. So this one is for the curse breakers, the overcomers, the ones who were told they can't, the ones who were ready to prove them all wrong. This is for anyone who makes a decision to break the cycle. Someone who knows their family past won't allow them to dictate their future. It's for those who know they are destined for more, but don't quite know how to get there. For those who want to chase greatness, no matter what the cost, I salute you. This book is the first step in living the life you were born to create. I look forward to seeing who you become throughout the process. Boom.
Eddie, I was gonna start clapping there, my man. I was like, this would be weird to clap on my podcast, but I'm doing it anyway. I don't even care. I love that. I love that because that's what we're trying to do with Carson's Coffee. We're trying to, yes, this is just a podcast, but I'm trying to create a movement of dads that are breaking that curse of saying all dads are dumb. All we do is work and we don't care about our family and all this. That's nonsense, man.
Exactly.
Woo.
And that's my entire mindset, right? I mean, obviously I didn't grow up with like I said, he left when I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, right? So like, and my dad, I never really had a relationship with him prior, like ever, to be honest with you. I know he was a truck driver when he was in the house, right? So when he wasn't abusing drugs or abusing alcohol, he was pretty much driving trucks, right? So like for me, it was just kind of like, okay, my dad was gone by the time I woke up in the morning, majority of the time. By the time I went to bed, he wasn't home yet. So it was like this perpetuating cycle of like, I never actually got to build a relationship with him. Right. And it's not to say I never resented him for it. I never looked at him as a bad person because of that. Right. I looked at all the other stuff. It was the alcohol, the drugs, and the abusing of my mom and all that different stuff is why I had that negative mentality of him. But I looked at his example, and every single year, I actually on Father's Day, I write a note to myself, or technically I guess it's to him because I don't know if he's alive or if he's dead at this point, right? But I say, thank you, Dad, for showing me the exact person of a man that I did not want to be.
Wow.
I don't hate him. I don't have any, like, I don't think he's the worst person in the world by any means, right? I know there's definitely people out there that's made some worse decisions. However, even though he was a bad example, he showed me exactly what I did not want to create with my own life, right? especially now being a father to 2 boys. And me and my wife, we plan on having 6 kids all together. So it's going to be interesting. But it's very interesting, man, like to see how, I grew up, but me and my brother, and now it's like I'm a dad and I got 2 little boys. And this is like this whole relationship all over again, right? But I looked at that for me as like, bro, I got to do things differently because I don't want to obviously end up like the dad that I had. But not only that, it's not that I don't want to be him. I just want to create something completely different for my kids. I always talk about building a ceiling, right? So my ceiling becomes my kids' floor for them to step on and for them to work through. So how high am I going to lift up this ceiling in order for my kids to be more successful, for them to be better than me, right? Yeah. That's my mentality.
Man, I love that. So 2 boys, what are their ages?
So I got a 16-month-old and a 3-month-old.
Oh. Oh man, you did it like we did it. Like I have a 5 and 4-year-old at home, so I understand that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. One was born March 1st, 2019, and the second one was born March 31st, 2020.
Wow. Wow. You're in it to win it right now, Eddie.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I got a finite window, right? I look at it as like I got to go build it now. While they don't necessarily know everything, what's going on and everything else, because I would say 4 to 5 years from now, I want to have that lifestyle where it's like, okay, I don't really have to do all these other things as far as work-wise and things like that. I want to be present, right? 100% present in my boys' life. I want to be here to coach them in whatever sports that they want to play. I want to be here to not just be the guy that brings home the bacon, but the dad who's present, but also has that lifestyle. Whereas though we're not struggling either, right? And I've learned that you can have both. You don't have to choose one or the other.
Isn't that interesting that so many people believe it's this or that?
Yes. Yep.
So
most guys do think that way.
Yeah. It's curious. I mean, we could go off on that, trying to figure that whole thing out, But like, I love the foresight that you have. That it's like, look, I'm going to put in work. I'm putting in a lot of work right now because I'm in this long game. This isn't a short game. I'm in a long game, but I want within this window, I want to be able to say, you know what? I determine what games I go to. I determine where I'm present, right?
Right.
And I just was talking to like my last guest about that, the difference between giving gifts like presents versus actually being present with them. Like,
yes.
Tell me about that. Like, what's that mean to you?
Definitely. So I love that. I love the way you said that. I might have to steal that, presence versus presence.
Yeah.
Definitely steal that. If y'all listen to this right now, write that down. That's a great tidbit. That's a golden nugget right there. But what that means to me, to be honest with you, Thomas, primarily it's that you have to be in your kid's life, right? Like how many people have you met? Maybe successful millionaires, billionaires, successful career dads, right? Who the majority of the time they come back and tell you like, oh man, if I can go back 10 years ago, I wouldn't have worked so hard. I just would have spent time with my kids. So how many dads do you know that are always like, man, just cherish that time right now because they grow up so fast, right? I understand that. I know that, right? And I don't want to shower them with gifts. That's me and my wife actually talked about that all the time because I know already right now financially, we're in a much better situation than I ever was in when I was growing up, right? And for me, I used to tell my wife all the time, like, Colleen, I don't know how I'm going to facilitate that hard work, that passion, that drive, and that sense of work ethic that I've had my entire life and instill that into my kids because they're already going to have so much more than I already had, right? That's for me, that's something that I always is in the back of my mind because I want them to have that same drive that I do. And I don't want them to feel entitled to anything, right? So for me, I don't want to shower you with gifts. I want you to earn everything that I'm giving you, right? Now, I'm not telling you to earn my time. Like I'm going to spend my time with you because I want to be the primary influence in their life, right? That's what when I hear presence, I want to be the primary influence. Not to say that my kids shouldn't have superheroes that are outside of me, but I want to be the biggest superhero in my boy's life, right? Yeah. But that means I have to continuously lead them. And leadership is spelled EXAMPLE, right? I have to be the example for them to follow. And that's what I think presence is. You can't show them how to be a man if you're never in the household so they can see what your actions look like, right? So my biggest mentality behind what I do right now, the grind that's happening right now, is so I can have that freedom of my time so that as they get older and they understand everything at 5, 6, 7 years old, and I can start teaching them like they're 13 and 14 years old, now it's going to be, I'm going to set them up on a completely different thought process and a completely different level so they can surpass me way before I did. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, that is what the presence thing is for me. I mean, obviously I want to give them everything that I can, right? Like I tell them all the time, I didn't get my first car until I graduated from college and I had to get it by myself. Honestly, if my kids can drive by the time they're 16 years old, I want to give them their first car, right? But you're going to earn it. It's not just going to be like, oh, you know, I turned 16, Dad, like, where my whip at? Like, no, bro, you're going to have to earn this whip. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to at least pay me half for it or something. Like, something's going to happen.
Right? And that's what's interesting, because I think that we, unfortunately, in society, have such that instant gratification model right now, right? You don't really have to wait for anything. So for you to get your car after college meant X, you know, like 10X, and the people that are just getting it at 16, it's just something that's part of their life, you know?
Right.
So you will always like cherish the fact that you can go out and drive and you can get in your car and you can go and do something rather than it just handed to you, right? And I think that trying to create that, I think that's a responsibility of us men, is to really raise our daughters, sons, whoever, to understand that you will appreciate something so much more if you earn it yourself. And it's okay to struggle to earn it. But when you have it after that struggle, man, you're going to love it, right?
Yes. That's what I tell people all the time. What you earn is valuable. What is given to you can be tossed away without you even thinking about it. Think about that, Thomas. What you earn is valuable. And the process it takes to earn something, it usually takes time. It takes time, it takes sweat equity, it takes the resilience, the perseverance to push through it. But once you get to the other side, that victory state, you're gonna have so much value inside of what you've now created or what you now received as a reward, because now you felt like you put in and you deserve it, right? It's a difference between entitlement and deserving something. Like when you're chasing success and you're compounding those decisions and those actions time in and time out, I start to, not to say I feel entitled, but I get that deep swelling inside of me, like I deserve this now. Like, at what point is this now going to pay me back? Like, I need this. This is mine, right? Like, and that's what a lot of people need to be. I don't know if it can be taught. I know for me, it was just something that I had, right? But that's for me. It's like, how do I teach that to my kids? How do I teach that to my boys? Because I want them to continue to have what I have right now and to speak with the same amount of passion and excitement about it.
I love that. I love that. Speaking of that, what is, besides creating their own passion, what is something that you as a dad are extremely passionate making sure that your boys learn in life?
That's a great question. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Thomas, I've thought about this a lot, especially over the last couple of years because of my boys being so small or so young, because they ain't small. But I would say I want my boys to know legacy. I want them to know the word legacy. And a legacy stretches much more than just yourself and your own family, right? Like for me, I wrote the book because primarily it was a mindset thing in regards to speaking. Like I needed to have a book to leverage for speaking. But as I started writing the book, to be honest with you, Thomas, it was like this deep swelling inside of me that I started to realize, like, oh, wow, this book is going to be passed down for generations, right? Not just my boys, but it's going to be other boys and girls who grew up in the exact same environments that I did, who feel as though they have no hope and no life and no chance of actually creating success. And they're going to read my story and they're going to say, oh my gosh, this dude made it. So can I, right? So I want my boys to know legacy. I want them to know that every single thing that they do is not about them. It's about legacy. It's about your kids and your great grandkids. And then not only them, but the friends of your kids and those great grandkids, because we're all going to interact and come across paths with different people who maybe maybe my grandkid would never go through what I went through when I was growing up. However, my grandkid might have a friend that went through the exact same thing I went through when I grew up. And then my grandkid is going to be able to share his granddad's story. And now that kid is going to be inspired and say like, oh my gosh, I can do the exact same thing for my family. I can break curses for my family. I can break chains for my family. And that's what I feel as though is the most important. Once they get that mindset of like, it's not about me and it's not about what I can accomplish in my own lifetime. It's about what I can accomplish that's going to impact generations to come.
So with that leads to what is the next step? What is Eddie working on to build for like your family, building that legacy?
Mm-hmm. It's a couple of different things that I'm working on. Primarily, it's how to. I feel as though obviously we're all just one person, right? And obviously I can't duplicate myself all the time in so many different areas. Like I can't carbon copy another Eddie Thomason, right? However, what I've been working on is a bunch of like online courses and things that I can get my message and the vision and the passion down in video so that can be evergreen, right? Because what I've learned is success principles are universal, right? It can be applied in any type of industry or arena that you're operating in. However, you just need to know the mindset first. That's to start up here before you can start actually acting upon it, right? So a lot of it is building some of that. More outside of that, me and my wife actually have, I don't know if you ever heard of Amway as an opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
So me and my wife also built an Amway business. It's actually very successful. My wife would be able to retire next year because of the income that we make there. And we love it. We love the fact that it's not necessarily that we leverage Amway. It's the coaching and the mentorship that we got connected to, and the men and women of character that we feel as though have taught us so much. Like if I didn't meet them 5 years ago, I'm not sure my mindset would be where it is today, right? Because of what they've been able to help teach me and coach me to do. So that's another huge piece of that. Because that's, again, it's an evergreen company. The products and everything is going to be there forever, right? So those are two primary things in itself. And then me and my wife are actually working on something where as though we can start a podcast together.
Yes.
And have evergreen content and things that's from a standpoint of like, living in an interracial marriage, right? Having two families start to collide and trying to, lead, not necessarily lead discussions, but at least put out conversations so that it sparks discussions and things in other people's households. Yeah. So it's different things that we got in the works right now. We just got to figure out how to organize it all and what's the best next step. You see what I'm saying?
I'm telling you, Eddie, and you need to do those things because here's the thing. I feel like when individual takes a risk, right?
Yes.
They give permission to others to take risk as well.
Yes.
So if you and your wife are willing to start certain conversations, you're giving other people the opportunity to start a conversation themselves.
Yep.
So
exactly.
It's like we got to do, and that's so important with our kids, right? Mm-hmm. Like we have to be able to not run from topics, not run from conversations. We have to be able to look at them, sit down. I mean, you're raising two boys into men. You're gonna, I'm raising two men right now. It's like I want them to understand the importance of like critical conversations. To like, if a conversation gets a little uncomfortable for them, good. Maybe they need to go back and get a little more education or figure some stuff out.
Right.
Exactly. It's important. It's important. So
it all boils down to this statement, right?
What's that?
It all boils down to this. I said it all boils down to this one statement. Teach them to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Once you get comfortable being uncomfortable, then there's nothing in this world that you won't be able to go get. Right? Because everything you want in life is right outside of your comfort zone. If you can get in the habit of just stretching your own comfort zone and you achieve and you kind of overlap this space, and then what else you want next is a little bit further out, and you got to get it, you achieve that next one, and you got to keep, and that's how that process just keeps on moving, right? Because you're comfortable being uncomfortable.
Absolutely. and yeah, it's that whole like failing forward fast, right? We just got to do it because there is no such thing when we're moving forward, right?
Facts.
So let's talk about something really quick. You said 5 years ago you weren't in the same headspace, and I don't want to really dwell on that as much as I want to know pre having your kids, Eddie, what were some of your goals and ambitions, and now having your two boys, how has that shifted?
Yep. So it's funny. A lot of it, I wouldn't say a lot of it has shifted, right? I think the time span is just kind of shortened, right? Because 5 years ago, I was single. Okay. 5 years ago, I did me and my wife, we just talked about it today. On the 18th, we'll have actually been together for 4 total years.
Okay.
We'll be married for 3 coming in September. Okay. Yeah. So like to think about that is just mind blowing to me. But second, 5 years ago, right? Like I said, I was single. So I had a vision of what I wanted, but I didn't really have a family to do it for yet, to perform for yet. Right. But I've always had this desire, like, man, I'm going to retire young. I'm retiring before I'm 30 years old from corporate America, and I'm going to work for myself and build something of a legacy that I can leave behind for my kids. I was like, at that point in time, my biggest goal was to be able to pay my mom $30,000 a year just because. Like, just put her on the payroll. Like, hey, Mom, I don't really care. Here's 30 grand. Appreciate you, right? You go do whatever you want with it. The other thing was being able to position my life to where as though if my wife did not want to work, she can choose not to. I didn't want to have a lifestyle where me and my wife started to spend leftovers with each other because we went different directions for 8 hours in the day. And then we came home and tried to coexist for about 3 hours and then went to sleep and woke up the next day and did the exact same thing again, right? So even back then, before I even had a wife, that was my mindset, right? I didn't want our marriage to fail because we just grew apart from each other, literally, right? So those were the things that was kind of on my docket and on my plate 5 years ago. Look at it today. I want my wife to be done next year, right? Yes. I want to have, for me, it's paying off actually. Because when I got married, I went on to school for a full ride. So when I got married, my wife, I tell her she's a smarter one because she has her master's degree and she's a teacher. So, but inside of that, we also have a lot of debt that we got because of that, right? Mm-hmm. So one of my biggest goals is before I come home and like walk away from my professional job, I want to be able to pay off all of our debt. So we're living literally scot-free with at least about 6 months of expenses inside the bank. So then that way, when I come home, I'm coming home for good. Like Dad's never going back to work for somebody else. And I have that flexibility with my time and my calendar. So that's how things have a little bit shifted. I would say it's still the nucleus of what I talked about 5 years ago. However, it's just like, it's a little bit more real because it's tangible. Like I'm not talking about this make-believe wife and this make-believe family. I'm talking about my real wife and my real boys.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. It's like, there is no better why than sitting at the table looking at your family and being like, exactly. I don't need anybody explaining. If you can't do it when looking at that, it's hard pressed to think of you being able to do it for yourself.
Exactly. I could be honest with you, I don't think I could have did it for myself, man. I look back at all of my accomplishments, Thomas, and everything was driven by somebody else. And that's wild to think about, right? Like, obviously, I got to have the work ethic. I got to have the ambition. But when I really flat out pursued things and, like, gave it my all is because somebody else was counting on me. That's when I always have been better as a person. And I I think that makes me even so much more of a better dad because I have people that depend on me, right? Like, if I don't produce, then my family doesn't eat. You see what I'm saying? So, like, back when I was single, I didn't really have that. It was just kind of like, if I don't produce, I'm only messing up myself. However, now it's like, if I don't produce, I'm messing up my family. And when I was just a teenager and wanting to go get a D1 scholarship, it was like, if I don't produce, I'm letting down my mom. I'm letting down all the people that have made sacrifices for me. It's like, I always thought of life bigger than me. It was never just revolved around me, right? So I always found somebody else that I could perform for that gave me the ambition and the drive to get out and do what I needed to do every single day, even when I didn't want to.
Yeah, I love that. I seriously do love that. Like, so when you're feeling down, Eddie, because we all have those days. We all have those days, especially when you're out and you're going for your own dreams. We have those days like, have I lost it? I feel like I'm on an island on my own sometimes. Like, what's happening? Right? When you feel those days, like, how much, like, or what do you do in regards to pushing forward? Because you just talked about like how family and stuff, like, do you envision your boys in a certain situation? You're like, I gotta get out of this, or what do you do?
I go take a drive. And the reason why I take a drive is because on my dashboard is a picture of my family. If you sit in my car in the driver's seat side, You don't see any of the lights. Like, you know, obviously I ain't got no lights on. Like I ain't got no check engine lights or anything like that. But you don't see. I ain't that bad. Sheesh. But no, you don't see any of the dashboard, like the odometer or anything else, because it's literally full of pictures.
Wow.
Because when I sit in my car, I always look down. I'm always refocused on what I'm fighting for, because they're the most important things to me. So I go take a drive, and I usually turn on the podcast. And most of the time, I either turn off the podcast and I just pray. I talk to my creator, my God. But I look at those pictures, and I'm like, man, there's so many different people that are counting on me right now. If I fail, they fail, and they probably don't feel like that way. Like, oh, if Eddie fails, then I'm never going to make it. However, I just put that pressure on myself, right? Because that's what makes me perform. That's just how I know how I operate intrinsically, right? But those pictures are everything to me, man. I gotta come back and look at those multiple times, especially me being in my 9-to-5. I'm in sales. So, you know, you might go from one sales meeting to another sales meeting. You might get, you know, punched in the face verbally by some different people. And you sit in that car and you realize, like, yeah, that was a horrible meeting. However, these people are counting on you. They don't care that you just had a bad meeting. You still got to produce. And that's what I come back to every single time.
Dude, again, you got to stop with this, man. You're giving too much away. I was thinking about that concept. I was like, what an amazing thing. And here's a little tidbit for any dads out there. Take what Eddie just said. Put a picture of your family on, like, replace it with how fast, the tictometer, whatever the heck the technological words for cars are. I'm not a mechanic, but you know, put the picture there, because when you look at your family, you're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're reversing, you're looking backwards anyway. But when you're looking at your family, man, you look forward and you drive forward and you keep driving. I love that. I love that.
I tell people all the time, Thomas, your windshield is bigger than your rear view mirror for a reason. Think about the difference between this big, huge piece of glass that's sitting out in front of you and this little teeny window that's up top. It should be a constant reminder of how you should always consistently be looking forward significantly more than you're looking behind you. What you did in your past will not determine your future. You have to continue to press on, man. You got to move forward, because I don't know if you said this already, but it's no such thing as standing still. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards by default. You have to decide to move. Just put one foot in front of the other, man. No matter how big the steps are, no matter if you're crawling at the time, move forward. Don't go backwards.
Oh, man. I love that. That's such good advice. And I want to know, like, when you're out giving some of your presentations, you're talking about your book, you're out there, you're helping motivate some of the youth. Has there been any story, like something that stands out in your mind that you're like, I have to remember that because I need that lesson in my mind so that I can navigate my own kids through a situation like that?
So I would say, so I got two different things, right? One of them is a story. I'll tell that second. But the first thing is kind of like, it's a tidbit that I always remind myself of, right? And the thing is, what I look at is a small hurdle, some people may look at as their big mountain. So I have to remind myself sometimes that as I'm speaking life into somebody and everything else, I can't downplay what they're going through. Because to them, it is the biggest thing. It is their brick wall. They can't get around it. They can't go through it. They feel as though it's their obstacle, right? So I got to realize how to get people, how to reach their calming ground so I can pull them up the higher ground. That is a constant reminder that I have to tell myself, because just because I'm at page 100, they're at page 1 and they're trying to compare themselves to my page 100. However, I have to bring myself back to their page 1 so we can travel this book journey together, right? We can kind of go through it and make sure that they get to where they need to go. So that's the lesson that I feel as though for me, I always have to remind myself of, because once I accomplish something or I overcome something, in my mind, it's so small that I just downplay it. It's like, oh, it's just a thing, right? Like, oh, you got a D1 scholarship? Yeah, bro, it's just a thing. Like everybody, like in my mind, everybody gets a scholarship. But obviously, it's not true, right? Like, but I gotta always bring myself back to that reality, right? The second thing, it is a story because it's just so it touched me, right? Because I spoke at a university And in my talk, I talked a little bit about the difference between advice and opinions, right? And how your parents and people who love you and your close personal friends and things like that, they typically give you opinions. They're not necessarily advice, because advice comes from someone who's in a standpoint of life of where you want to be. And they're teaching you valuable lessons that they've learned so that you can get to where they are, right? Compared to an opinion is someone who has some, third person knowledge of some type of situation, and they try to give you an opinion, and they may think it's advice, but however, it's just their own bad experience with some type of situation. And to make it all sound simple for everybody else, I like to bring it back to just the simplicity of me and my mom. I love my mom to the fullest. As you already know, I'm a mama's boy, right?
Love that.
However, I will never go to my mom and ask my mom for business advice. My mom has never owned a business. So why would I go to my mom and ask her for business advice, right? My mom has never even had friends who'd owned businesses. So anytime I go to my mom and ask her, like, hey, mom, what do you think about, starting an LLC versus a sole proprietorship? Or, hey, mom, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? She's going to look at me and be like, oh, well, I heard about this one thing on this one show that you need to do about this, but it's never actual experience, right? So those are the things, those are the slight tricks that you got to realize for yourself, is that you can't go to somebody asking for advice if they've never actually done what you're looking to pursue, okay? So that's the number one thing. So I talk about that in most presentations, the difference between advice and opinions. When I talked about this guy came up to me at the end of my presentation, and he was like, Eddie, thank you so much for everything that you just said, man. It had a huge impact on me. I'm a first-generation entrepreneur. My mom was a doctor, and my dad was an engineer, and they told me that what I need to do to be successful in life is go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a good job, and basically work, right? However, I had this desire I wanted to own something of my own. I saw how much time my mom and dad spent away from me, and not to say that I resent them for it in any way, shape, or form, but I didn't want to live the exact same lifestyle that they had. I wanted some more flexibility with my own time, right? And I remember, being there, I was just kind of like, man, that's huge that you're looking to do that. And he was like, I'm taking your advice, and instead of listening to them and their opinions, I'm going to start my own business. And I think that was 3 years ago. I forget what the actual name of his company is now, but I know it's an 8-figure business now, because he made the decision to be like, I'm not listening to my family, right? Not to say that this family didn't mean him any well and anything like that. He just believed more in his own dream, and he took that decision. He took that action, right? And now his family is better off because of that decision, right? So that's just a huge thing for me. When you hear different stories like that, like people that come up to me and say, hey, it was because of something that you said. And for me, I don't look at it as just something I said. I look at it, I say, God uses us in all different ways, right? So he used me as a vessel to tell that kid what he needed to hear, so he can go and walk out his victory in his own life. And that's exactly how I see it. And I love being used as a vessel all the time.
Absolutely. And what do you think, just trying to reflect on that a little bit and think about it, how does that play into the advice that you're going to give your own kids then? Because I'm sure you've taken that to heart, and you're like, I may not be the right person to answer that for you guys.
Yep. So I surround myself with great people, Thomas, to be honest with you. Association is huge, man. Another thing that I've learned, especially now being in the sphere of influence and people that I hang around today, your kids a lot of the times are heavily influenced by your friends. Like, and I'm talking to the dads, moms and dads out there. Your kids are heavily influenced by your friends, right? Because a lot of the times your kids look at you as an example, but then they also look at those people who are close to you, and they say like, oh man, well, if mom's hanging out with, this one dude that continues to just mess up all the time or do all these other things, that has an influence on the kid, right? It starts to play like, oh, okay, subliminally on their subconscious. It's like, oh, maybe I should just be the dude that messes up all the time, and I'll continue to have somebody that's there for me, right? And continuously accepting me and welcoming me back. So if you hang around with these high energy, high ambitious people, then it's going to rub off onto your kids as well, right? Another thing is surround yourself, again, talking to mom and dads, surround yourself with people who are going to echo you a little bit, right? Like in regards to like, you know, a couple that we hang out with all the time, they're here locally, their name is Evan and Rachel Grubb. And if we get my kids around them, they got 3 kids of their own, but they're always talking stuff like, hey, you know, your dad is one of the most compassionate men that's around. Hey, your dad is one of the most impactful men that I've ever interacted with, right? It's like not to say I'm not going around and telling my kids that I'm that, right? But having your friends share that message to your kids only adds more credibility to you, right? Because now that's somebody else saying it. That's not you saying it or mom saying it about you, right? It's somebody else that they don't get to spend every single day with. And they're like, wow, if this person respects my dad so much, maybe I should also have more respect for my dad. You see what I'm saying?
Love that. Love that. And what advice do you have then for dads that are just like, I don't even know where to find? Some people just feel so lost right now. Like, where do you even find friends to help you level up? Like, where'd you originally try to find some of these friends that have these big impacts?
So I'm going back to the same thing we said earlier. I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because there was a lot of people who, especially when I moved here, just to, again, a little bit of content or context before I give the content, right? I moved into Binghamton, New York in 2015. I knew nobody, zero, zilch. I was basically starting from scratch. I didn't know a soul, right? So I decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put myself out there. I'm gonna go to some different networking events. I'm gonna try to meet some different people. And then obviously a lot of times you get a feeling. It was kind of like when me and you met for the first time, even though we haven't met physically, but we met over, and it was just like, man, I love this dude's energy. I love what he does. I love his background. And like, for me, that was what it was for the guy, Evan, I was just talking about. I was like, man, here's this guy. He was 10 years older than me, right? I think he was 33 or something like that when I met him, right? And he has a successful business. He's got a successful marriage. He's a successful dad. I was like, man, I've never seen anything like this. And I had to put my ego down, right? I said, obviously, this dude has so much more in life and he knows so much more than I know right now. And instead of trying to compete with him and one up his stories and say, oh, I've done this, I was like, you know what? Squash the ego, because you're going to be able to learn so much more from this man. And like I said, over the last 5 years, this man has taught me more about me and myself and what I can actually accomplish in my life than anybody else has ever had. Because I surrendered that ego and I said, hey, I don't know everything. And this guy knows enough that if I learn from him without some type of prejudgment or anything else, if I just surrender myself and learn from him, then I'm going to put myself, and if I put myself in a better spot, then I'm going to put my family in a better spot too.
Yes, sir. I love that. I love that. We need that. We need that, men. Listen, seriously, rewind that section back if you need to. You have to be able to surrender your ego sometimes, and you need to be able to see how, by doing that, you are going to elevate the situation for your family. Mm-hmm. Our kids don't expect us to be perfect, man.
Nope.
They don't expect us to be perfect, but they do expect us to try. And we can only try sometimes when we sit back, we say, hey, I'm not the best, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to grind. I'm willing to go. And next thing you know, you're leveling up not only yourself, but you're elevating your family, right?
Amen.
I love
That's exactly
that.
how it goes.
We're gonna do this. Do this game. I'm if you've heard it, I got these cards.
Word?
What's your word? Okay. So this has been crazy. There's probably, I mean, it's like a normal deck. There's probably like 52 cards or something in here. The last 2 guests I've had on the show both pulled the same card, and this is so random. Wow. So I'm gonna pull them out here. You just tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. Ooh.
Is it the same one?
No, it's not the same one. That would have been. Hey, I would have been like, this is rigged.
Better say, bro, you might have to add that to your questionnaire, dog.
Yeah, that would have been the new quote on my profile or something. That
right.
was too much. So, all right, Eddie. This question is, what did you learn from your biggest regret?
What did I learn from my biggest regret? That's tough. It's tough. That's a tough question to answer. Primarily because when people ask me if I have regrets, I usually always tell them I don't have regrets. I tell them, and I also tell people I don't lose, I only learn, right? So it's a tough thing for me to answer. However, I'm gonna say this because I don't know. I feel as though sometimes when God kind of puts something in your heart, you go ahead and share it. I didn't even know this is going to be something that came out today, right? But one of the things that I wish I was a virgin when I married my wife. One, because my wife was a virgin. But as we started to get more intimate in our relationship, I had this feeling, and thankfully God has been working on me, and it's been helping my mindset and everything else. But back then I felt as though I had pieces of me scattered everywhere else, and I wasn't giving my full self to my wife. So for me, it was I felt like I was cheapening our relationship because I had sexual partners with different people, or I had different sexual partners. That was weird. Sexual partners with different people. But
it's all good. We all
got you. So I wouldn't say like I said, I feel as though everything happens for a reason. It's kind of it's a part of your story, right? Like I'm a firm believer. It's like your mess is your message. So don't try to like hide it or try to keep it away from different people or anything else. Like be an open book, share what you know, because other people need to know what you know, right? Because you went through some different things. However, it's tough. It's for me. I wish I'd have saved myself for marriage, man, especially knowing like me being a man of faith now and know who I am. I guess I'm saying this right now as well because I want my sons to do that. I don't want my sons to cheapen what they could have that is created by God. I don't want them to cheapen that on anybody else that was not for them or was not meant for them, right? So for me, being the guy, like I can't be that example for them. Like I can't be the one to say like, hey, your dad did that and he saved himself from marriage. Like for me, I don't know, I guess you would call it a regret, but like for me, that's something that I'm not proud of, put it that way, right? However, I feel as though I can use my feelings, my emotions and things that I felt post-wedding to describe that feeling and describe that lesson to my sons. Because I had this mentality, man, like, you know, I was a stereotypical D1 football player when I was in school, right? I knew God was in my life. However, I didn't have any type of relationship with him. So therefore I was just kind of doing anything that I wanted to do with anybody I wanted to do it with. And like I said, it wasn't until I met that amazing woman that is the mother of my kids that I realized like, man, I really cheapened what God was supposed to like, was there to make an amazing bond, an amazing connection. Cause I felt like there was pieces of me that was missing. Right. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that was definitely something that, you know, I feel as though for me deep down on a more of a personal level, I definitely don't want my kids to do what I did. I don't want them to follow in those footsteps.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
But what a valuable lesson, right? Regardless of what that story was, like you realize something in your life that you're like, this woman that I'm married to means the world to me. And I didn't feel at a point like I was giving her my all because of something that's happened in the past. But dad's willing to also put in the work to know that this is my woman and I'm going to make sure that I take care of the situation from now on out, you know?
Right. Exactly. And like I'm committed. Obviously committed to my wife. And that's not nothing. Adultery is not a thing. That's another one of those generational curses that I was like, you know what? Nah, bro, I'm not going to have that in my life. That's not going to be a part of my family. And my kids are not going to know that either. Right. Because if you set that example, I kind of felt as though that's subliminally, subconsciously, it was kind of in my own mind. But again, that's not an excuse. It's now I have to make that decision. I am married. I'm in a covenant now. I'm married. So therefore nothing else is going to break this covenant. You see what I'm saying? Like, and that's the example that I now set for my sons. Like now at this point, there's nothing else that's going to come in between me and your mom. Actually, I tell people all the time, it's faith first. I'm a man of God first. I'm a husband second, and then I'm a dad. Everything else falls underneath of that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, if I align myself with him first, and then I make sure me and my wife are on the same page, then everything else it makes everything else move like butter. Okay.
And I think it's important. I mean, my wife and I say this, I think I've said it on another episode. you know, I chose my wife before I chose to be a father.
Amen. There you
So
go.
it's like, and it's
So,
like, and these boys,
write that down. Write that down.
yeah, and, you know, and my boys are going to know that because
Right.
they're going to see that every day. Like, hey, because they're going to test, they're going to do stuff.
Mhm.
I'm going to be like, you can pull a lot of crap. That's my queen right there, though. Like, we
Exactly.
talk about everything. We know everything. I
Yep.
chose her, you know, and it's like I say that to them. Even now, they're 4 and 5. I'm like, that's hey, hey, I love you guys to death, but this is my partner for life. You know, it's like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
That's so true, man. I love that. I chose my wife before I chose to be a dad.
yeah.
I like that. I'm
And it
stealing
does,
that.
and that doesn't take like the good thing, that doesn't take anything away from them and the love
Nope.
I have from them at all.
Nope.
But
Not at
man,
all.
it is important for me, especially to show them what a healthy relationship is.
Yes.
They need
Yes.
to see the affection I have for them. They need to see me not raising my voice with my wife. They need to see
Yes.
me like having patience and being kind, because whoever
Yes.
they're with, I want that individual to treat them that same way.
Exactly. Yep. 100%. I'm
Yeah.
a firm believer. This might be a little bit of a sidebar, but I'm a firm believer that every boy needs to know the love of his mother, and every girl needs to know the love of their dad. Because when you grow up and you're looking for a partner, you're looking for those same traits that you saw growing up in those two people. And it's funny because like when I talk to my wife and I talk, my wife knows I'm a mama's boy and everything else. And I never just tell my mom like, oh, I never tell my wife like you remind me of my mom like that. Dads, don't do that. Okay. Don't do that. However, I told her, I told her this story. Like I shared this exact same thing that I'm talking to you about right now. And, I told her that one of the most compassionate people that I ever met in my entire life is my mom. Like my mom will give you everything. She would give you before she even has anything left of her own, right? Like she's just one of those natural givers, right? And I never met anybody that was on the exact same level in that situation until I met my wife. It's like this natural born caregiver, this giver, this compassionate, loving, like with every inch of their soul, right? I'd never met anybody like that until I met my wife outside of my mom. And I felt as though it was a determining factor of like, I know I'm going to marry this woman because her heart is always pure. You see what I'm saying? Like, and I feel as though like, I feel like if I didn't have that in my mom, if I didn't see that in my mom, I would be lost on what I'm looking for in a woman because I didn't have the structure, the stability of knowing what a mom should look like, right? Because I feel like, subliminally, when you're picking your wife, you're also looking at like, all right, is she gonna be a good mom? She gonna be this? What kind of traits that she got? It's like those are some of the things that I had on the inside. But like, I look forward to having girls because I know we want to have 6 kids. So I feel like out of the 6, we're gonna have to have at least one girl, right? Like.
Right.
So I look forward to having girls because something that my father-in-law told me. So my father-in-law, my wife is one of 3 girls. And my father-in-law's advice was, or his statement was, every dad wants a boy, but every man needs a daughter. Because it's a completely different mindset. It's a completely different amount of respect. It's a completely different way to be a father, right? And I look forward to sharing that bond with a daughter, man. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It'll definitely be an interesting time.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
So that was a sidebar, but my bad. Go ahead.
No, I love that. I love that. So I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you and I talked about this offline before, but when you sit back and you reflect and you're like, man, if there was seriously one lesson that I could make sure if I had to leave something and it was just my boys right now, if I had to leave one message for them behind, like, what would that be?
If I had to leave one message behind for my boys, what would that be? It's a great question because there's so many lessons out there that you want them to have. I'm trying to think of the one that comes back to everything. You know what? I feel like I can't go wrong with this one. And I would say I want my boys to know the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And the reason why I say that is because there have been some times in my life where I treated people poorly. I talked about, the relationships and things that I had prior to my wife. I treated people poorly. You know, although I talked about having a mentality of like I was fighting for other people, like my mom and different people like that. I also had this mentality of like whatever I can do to get ahead, I'm going to get ahead, right? And when you create those bad types of that negative mentality, right? Then now you start to create a habit. And I never want my boys to have a habit of not putting people first, right? Put people first in everything that you do, because if you put people first, then the money and everything else is going to follow. So treat others the way that you want to be treated, which is basically what respect, right? Respect everybody. Don't feel as though you're better than anybody else, right? You're not greater than anybody else. We're all on an equal playing field. And if you got to put yourself in other people's shoes, if somebody's asking you for help, don't look down on them like, oh, you peasant, I can't help you. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were down and all you needed was a quick jolt, right? Not necessarily money wise or just I'm talking about opportunity wise, right? Opportunity wise. If somebody's like, hey man, I can do this for you and I'm more than able, I got the skill sets, whatever else it may be, and they're willing to take that chance, give them a shot, right? Because that's what we're all looking for, is an opportunity. So treat that person the way that you want to be treated. Think about that person as your dad, right? Because I had different people as I was growing up. People said I didn't have any opportunity. I had lack of opportunity, right? However, there was people in my life that said, no, man, I'm going to give this kid a shot. And it was because of those people that I'm able to even have this conversation with you right now. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And because I want to respect your time here, one thing that I really like to I've been fascinated with this lately, because I really do want to build a community of strong men that feel proud to call themselves dads. Really, because it's one thing to be, yeah, I'm a dad. We stand there and be like, yeah, I mean, you can feel it. Yeah, I'm a dad. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not only a dad, I'm an amazing dad. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
Yep.
What advice would you have just for men that you can see kind of maybe lacking in society or whatever, that you could just give, that you say, you know what, man, this is one thing I would say kind of focus on, and just by doing that, you're one step closer to being that dad you probably want to be.
Amen. And I'm gonna come back to what I talked about earlier in the show. Leadership is spelled EXAMPLE. As a dad, you are the example. Okay. So if you want your kids to act a certain way, if you want your kids to respect their mom a certain way, if you want your kids to do anything in life that you expect them to do, you have to be willing to do it yourself first. You have to show them. My wife tells me all the time, well done is better than well said. So go out there and do. Stop being the dad that's being a dictator. Stop trying to force your kids to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. Go out there, and if you really want to be a man, you want to beat on your chest, show them what it looks like to win. Go pursue your dreams. Go do the things that you need to do to create that lifestyle and that home of peace that you want your kids to have, and then they will grow up and duplicate your actions.
Period.
Boom.
I love that. Eddie, where can people find you, man, so they can start following you and getting to be part of that network?
Definitely. So you can go onto my website. It's eddiethomason.com, EDDIETHOMASON.com. You can get all of my information that's on side of there. The primary social media that I hang out on is on LinkedIn. That's actually where me and Thomas met. Phenomenal platform for you to build these amazing relationships with other people. So that's where primarily I hang out. And here's what I tell people all the time too, Thomas. If you want to reach out to me, if you want to have a conversation, don't put me on a pedestal. Okay. I'm not an untouchable guy. Okay. I'm not, just because I feel like a lot of people hear people on podcasts and they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much further along to me in life and all this other stuff. Cut it out. I'm just a regular dude. I'm a dad. I got issues. I got problems just like all of you guys. I just made more consistent positive decisions over time probably than you have. Okay. And if that's the case, I don't want you to put me on a pedestal and say I can't reach out to him. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on my email. It's just Eddie@EddieThomason.com. Whatever it is, I'm here to help, okay? And if I can't help, then I have a tremendous network of people who I know who can. So reach out, man. And that's, you'll find out real fast that I'm here to serve. I call myself a servant leader. If I can serve you, then that's what I want to do.
There it is. Eddie, my man, I appreciate you so much jumping on, the value you're adding, the conversations, the insight on the dadhood. I really appreciate it, brother. Like I said, thank you so much for your time. It means a lot to me.
Absolutely, Thomas. Thank you for your time, man. Like I said, I appreciate you. I appreciate your brand. I appreciate what you're doing. And I know a lot of dads, like you talked about before when we were offline, we're going to be that generation that's going to bring forth an army of new dads because of decisions that we're making right now. And the world is going to see such a strong example of fatherhood because of what you're doing right now, because of your show. And I stand behind it 100%, man. I declare that in Jesus' holy name. It's happening.
Well, I appreciate you, dude. Seriously, thank you so much, dude.